Does Social Security need saving? Providing for retirees throughout the 21st century by Dimitri Papadimitriou and L. Randall Wray. Trustees Unwarranted and Unnecessary Pessimism. In sum, the expectation of long-range financial problems for OASDI results primarily from assumptions regarding low fertility rates, slow growth of the labor force, increased longevity, low net immigration, low growth of real wages, and a falling portion of wages that are taxable, with the low growth in the labor force and real wages being the most significant. Real wages grew at a rate of 2.2% per year throughout the 1960s, but are assumed to grow at only 0.9% over the long run. The labor force grew at a rate well above 2.0% per year previous to 1980, but is projected to grow at only 0.1% in 2020, 0.2% in 2030, and 0.1% after 2050. On the basis of these assumptions, financial problems will persist even after the demographic anomaly of the baby boom is long gone. Small changes in these factors would alter the intermediate forecast sufficiently that OASDI would be in close actuarial balance without resorting to higher payroll taxes or reduced benefit payments. If real wage growth were increased, if the portion of compensation received in wages did not fall as much as assumed, if fringe benefits were taxed, and if the contribution base were increased, the actuarial gap would be reduced. Moreover, if real wage growth rose to 2.0%, if an extra 600,000 immigrants, if an extra 600,000 immigrants were added per year, and if fertility rates rose to 2.2, 89% of the intermediate case actuarial gap would be eliminated. We thus agree with many other commentators who have argued that the trustees have used assumptions that are unduly pessimistic. For example, David Longer, a consulting actuary, has recently said that the trustees, quote, have relied almost exclusively on macroeconomic speculation based on a dismal view of the future economy. The actuarial assumptions produced are thus overly conservative, generate higher costs than warranted, and result in an unjustifiably large imbalance of costs, benefits and expenses, over income, over the 75-year measuring period. End quote. Longer, 1999. He questions whether the trust fund actuaries have followed the guidelines established in the Actuarial Standards of Practice, ASP, by the Actuarial Standards Board of the American Academy of Actuaries. In particular, ASP 27 recommends use of, quote, appropriate recent and long-term historical economic data, end quote. And ASP 32 requires that, quote, if assumptions differ from recent experience, the report should discuss the factors that lead to the choice of assumptions used, end quote. Longer argues that the assumptions used in the forecast, especially those associated with forecasting real GDP growth, are far more pessimistic than recent experience and long-term historical trends would suggest, and that the trustees' report does not provide a justification for the use of such pessimistic assumptions. Langer shows that the trustees have consistently adopted more pessimistic assumptions in each succeeding report since 1979. Furthermore, even the reports before 1979 turned out to be overly pessimistic. The real-world outcome consistently proved to be better than the trustees' projections. Langer acknowledges that private programs must use conservative assumptions to build up greater reserves, as a precaution against a major adverse event, such as a bankruptcy or a poor economy, so that there will be adequate funds available to cover the benefit values accrued to date, should the program have to be terminated. However, a national social insurance program, such as Social Security, does not share these concerns because our federal government, as opposed to a private employer or insurer, will continue indefinitely. Workers and employers are required by law to participate and thus cannot opt out of paying the Social Security payroll taxes. Further, if the economy sours, as it did during the Depression, the taxing power of the government will be available to sustain benefit payments. End quote. Langer, 1999. Indeed, in their annual report for 1999, the trustees projected that the trust funds would not be exhausted until 2034, 2 years later than they had projected in their 1998 report, Social Security Administration, 1999. Such corrections become necessary because economic growth continually exceeds the pessimistic assumptions adopted in the forecasts. Although private programs should be biased toward conservatism, a public program requires no such bias. The trustees have not provided a compelling argument for their assumptions that the economy of the future will be far worse than the economy of the past.